It's finally here. The underwhelming conclusion to the perpetual failure machine that was Sony's lack of Spider-Man universe with villains that were actually heroes, not even anti-heroes. Every movie in this pitiful attempt was bad. At best, one was mid. Not exactly a glowing success. But Kraven is here. No one wanted it, but it's here. No one's seeing it, but it's here. It dropped to a whopping 11% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I know doesn't really mean anything, but even the people that aren't just like Rotten Tomatoes critics don't like it. And it was pretty clear that this wasn't going to be a good movie from the very first trailer, really. And it only got worse as time went on, where even the director came out and publicly begged, actually groveling, for people to go see the movie, saying to please give it a chance. The writing was on the wall that this wasn't going to be good. But it is better than Madam Web. And it's better than the worst movie of the year, Borderlands. I will get my best compliment out of the way for Kraven right now. Things happen. And that is more than you can say for both Madam Web and Borderlands. Now, that's about where the compliments come to a screeching halt, really. There are some action sequences that are good, unfortunately brought down by really bad CGI, but despite that, there are some good action moments. Like, there's 2 kills in here that I actually thought were pretty cool, like, kind of creative, so that was nice. And that's every single compliment that I could possibly fish out for this movie. So I just got back from seeing it and fighting off the drowsiness from how boring the first act was, and I took some notes, which is how you know the movie wasn't very good when I start taking notes. I do want to mention that they had it in the biggest theater there, like the biggest screen, and I was one of only like 10 people seeing it. So I'm getting the impression that this isn't going to be a, smash hit. Not going to be a grand slam here, I'm going to tell you that much. But I think we all knew that because it's a Sony no Spider-Man movie. They just are not working. And luckily they're done with it, so that's good at least. Anyway, though, the first half of the film, they dropped the first 8 minutes on YouTube, so you can kind of get a gauge for how the movie kind of plays out. He is not a bad guy. He's not a villain. He's not even an anti-hero. Kraven is just a full-blown hero. He hunts bad guys. He even has a list of bad guys, an actual Santa Claus naughty list, and he goes and kills them. So the whole premise of the film is he's killing bad guys in order to save a family member, which happens in the second act towards the end. In the first act, though, after the 8-minute intro, which has a couple of action sequences and he breaks out of a prison, after that it's a flashback. And he's hunting with his father, Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe is on a real stinky streak. He has been in so many shit films recently. He's just in that era where he's just taking paychecks. Like, he's not really even trying that hard. In this movie in particular, I don't think he even really gave a fuck. Like, he didn't even bother to try and have fun with it. He just looked bored in every scene. It was just, he was cashing it in, which, it's Kraven. I don't think anyone thought this would be good. But that always brings me back to... I know I'm not even talking about the movie right now in particular, but it always brings me back to, like, common sense. A movie of this scale, with this kind of budget, goes through so many different departments, so many different people put their fingers in the pie. How could nobody pipe up and say, hey, this is bad. Nobody's going to want to see this. Like, I don't know how that doesn't happen. Like, I understand lazy cash grabs, but usually a lazy cash grab has a chance of making money. Kraven never even stood a fucking chance. What's the point? It's not like they even tried to do anything with it, really. They were more than content just being generic. And that's all. I don't get it. Anyway, though. So they're in the flashback for the first, 35 minutes of the movie-ish, probably. That's another thing. This movie didn't even have the courtesy of being short. It was a long movie. It was a fucking slog. I don't think it was over 2 hours, but it was pretty close. So the first 35 minutes, they're in the flashback, and Kraven and his brother are with their father. He's a real asshole. They don't like him. They're hunting. There's this big chunky lion that is a legend, and their father Nikolai wants to kill the lion so he can become a legend, but instead the lion has a staring contest with Kraven, Sergey. So they have a staring contest for some reason. They bond, and then Nikolai shoots the lion, and then the lion panics and mauls Sergei, and then carries him off into some bushes and plops him down. And then a girl comes over with a magic potion and dumps it in his mouth. So that girl is Calypso, and in this flashback, there was a different flashback scene where Calypso's with her grandmother, and she's doing like a tarot card reading that ends on the strength card, which has a lion on it, and then the grandmother gives her a potion and says it's going to heal someone in undreamed of ways. And then that girl is on like a photography trip with her parents, and she randomly decides to like get up and leave, and then she stumbles across the lion and Sergei, and then she pours the magic elixir in his mouth and gives him the tarot card and vanishes. So then he wakes up with superpowers. That's his origin story. It's really fucking lame. It's super lame. But it's bad. It's just bad. It's just bad. Then after starting to figure out that he's got new powers and stuff, he decides to abandon his brother and leave his father behind and go live in the woods. And he's basically just Tarzan. He's just Tarzan. A lot of the first 35 minutes is spent with him staring into animals' eyes as animals stare into his eyes. There are so many scenes of them just locking eyeballs. Like, all the animals fucking worship him all of a sudden because of, like, the lion blood inside of him. It's really lame. So anyway, he's Tarzan now. He's living in the woods, and there's some poachers. Poachers are like the big bad guys that kind of bring Kraven to life. So he kills some poachers, because everyone hates poachers. Poachers fucking suck. They are villains. And in this movie, they're like the first bad guys we're introduced to. So Kraven kills the poachers. Honestly, the first 35 minutes felt like an R-rated version of the Wild Thornberrys, but without him speaking to animals. They were communicating telepathically. And that even comes in towards the end of the movie where the impression is he like summons a stampede. Like there's this I guess I don't want to spoil everything, but it's implied that he like summons a stampede, so he's like some kind of influence over the animals to a certain extent. He's like Aquaman, but on land. He's fucking Landman. Anyway, though, I'm breaking the timeline here. So after like hunting poachers and shit, it fast forwards again 16 years later, and we see Calypso. She's now a lawyer, and one of her friends has been killed after investigating some bad guys. And Kraven shows up at the funeral and hands her the tarot card that she left him 16 years ago. Somehow, he found her 16 years later from only the tarot card and nothing else. They don't even explain it. They just say he took a while to find her. He just says, yeah, it took me a while, but I found you. Fair enough, I guess. He's very good at tracking people, is what they're trying to get across. But he shows up at the funeral, hands her the tarot card back. Now they become friends. And he wants to work with her to start finding the people that are on this list more efficiently. I will say, though, he's supposed to be like the master tracker and he can find anyone. Kind of underwhelming that he then goes to a lawyer to just find people for him. Seems just kind of lazy, or maybe he's just not that good at it. Also possible. So they team up kind of to like get all the bad guys so Kraven can kill them. We then learn about the Rhino. The Rhino is basically a dweeb. He's a guy who everyone counted out and underestimated, so his big character arc is he got real strong by going to this doctor in New York who gave him like tenfold strength enhancement, but it ended up making his skin rhino-like. So then he takes like a serum to keep the rhino side suppressed because it hurts. He doesn't like the pain of being Rhino. So that's like the main bad guy is the Rhino. We get like a side bad guy named the Foreigner, and he has like the ability to like brainwash people temporarily, where he'll just count 1, 2. And then they're like kind of stunned, like they're frozen, while he can move around freely. So he just kind of like teleports around like that while they're stunned, which is a cool power. Like that's pretty strong, but they don't really utilize it super well. Like one of the times they use it is where the Foreigner is talking to this guy who just fed wrong wrong on purpose information to Calypso. It was all a ploy to like fool Calypso to get Kraven to a certain spot. And the Foreigner was talking to this guy, and then he's ready to kill him. So the Foreigner, hypnotizes him. 1, 2, and then he just shoots him during that. You could have just shot him. Like the guy that he shot was unarmed. He was just standing in a stairwell. What was the point in even putting him in the trance? You could have just shot him. Like, it's a cool power that I don't think they utilize in a really cool way, unfortunately. Because anytime he uses it, it's kind of just like a gun would have done the same thing and nothing else. Like, you didn't need the power. Like, it never at any point got him out of a really sticky situation, per se. He could have always just shot the person or the people that were there. So, kind of underutilized. But I actually thought that character was interesting at the very least, because he's also like a master assassin. So that's kind of cool, like the master hunter versus the master assassin. When they actually square off, kind of sucks. It just kind of sucks. I'm not going to spoil how that goes. I just thought that was a really lackluster way of dealing with that guy, with the foreigner. I'm not even going to bother with the rest of the notes. The movie's just not good. You weren't planning on seeing it anyway. Nobody is planning on seeing this movie. For good reason. It's just a waste of time. Like I mentioned, there's a couple decent action moments, but I can't even say like full action scenes are good, because the CGI is so bad in those scenes that it does weigh that down. So you can only have like a couple flashes of decent moments. So like him using the bear trap to kill a guy was cool. Him setting up this elaborate trap with bear traps and a giant log, that was cool. But the rest of that scene around it, not very cool. So there's like a couple of moments that are decent, but overall it's just not really a good movie. It is infinitely better than Madam Web, though. That movie had nothing in it, like actually nothing, and it's better than the Borderlands movie because that movie also had nothing in it, and Borderlands is still worse because not only did it have nothing in it, but it had the worst fucking jokes ever. At least Kraven, this movie, doesn't really have many jokes. Like, maybe one or two total. So, it's better than two of the worst movies of the year. So, it's improvement, like, all things considered, for the Sony villain Spider-Man verse, but they're not villains, they're actually heroes, there's just no Spider-Man. Anyway, that's really about it. See ya.